It's amazing how triggered our little old podcast gets people. We're just a little old show, you know? It's just me and Nicole hanging out in a makeshift garage talking about politics. I mean, why have we bothered people so much? Here's the thing, though. What happens when someone's backed into a corner? When you back a rabid animal into a corner, they're going to lash out, right? They're fighting for their lives. Well, right now, the far left is fighting for its life when it comes to radical gender ideology. And so they are absolutely lashing out at us. And you know what? That's okay. I don't mind being lashed out at. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. So as you know, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've sort of been at the center of this story out of the Thurston County School District, or the Tumwater, rather, School District in Washington State. So we had first done an interview with a young woman named Frances Stout, who is 15 years old, and decided that she was not going to play in her final basketball game of the year because there was a biological boy on the other team. And so we did two. I mean, it's fascinating that there's been so much unhinged behavior over these interviews, because we did two very thoughtful, long-form interviews on this story. We interviewed, of course, Frances Stout and had her and her mom on the show for an hour or so. And then we turned around and we interviewed the transgender athlete, Andy Rooks, and had a fantastic conversation with Andy about Andy's perspective on all of this. So it was a really, in-depth, thoughtful, respectful dialogue. And then you saw adults on the far left just lose their ever-loving minds over the fact that we're raising these issues around biological boys competing against girls. So there's been some updates on this over the weekend. As you know, we didn't have a live show on Thursday, but that doesn't stop the news from newsin'. So first, just a reminder, here's part of our interview with Frances Stout and her mom, talking about, again, this is a teenage girl who has to be the one to put herself out there because she's trying to stand up for what she knows to be right.
I think it's a shame because I am young and I'm still a teenager, and to think that I have to be the one to stand up. I'm not afraid to stand up. I am very strong in my beliefs, and I'm not scared, but I do think it's a shame that I have to be the one.
Yeah, and it's also a shame that after she stands up as a 15-year-old, you have teachers in her own school, in her own district, and the Tumwater Education Association basically trying to shame her for what she did. So something really interesting has happened here, and I think pretty significant. So for those of you who don't know, I would say that Tumwater is a pretty progressive place. I mean, we're talking about near Olympia. We've done stories on the Tumwater Education Association, the Tumwater School Board, the Tumwater School District, and sort of the radical social indoctrination and political indoctrination in schools. So this is by no means like some school district in Eastern Washington in a red conservative place. Well, they had a school board meeting while we were on this break over the long break from Thursday's show. And they voted. It's interesting because the news articles that you see out there aren't quite accurate, but here's the King 5 News headline. It says, Tumwater School Board bans transgender girls from playing girls' sports, which of course, that just means they ban boys from playing girls' sports. It says the vote sparked a protest inside district headquarters, leading to the cancellation of the remainder of the meeting. So a few things here. Let me just correct the King 5 headline first. They didn't vote, the Tumwater School Board didn't vote to ban boys from playing against girls. They can't do that on an island. In Washington State, our state policies in WIAA says that you get to participate in the sport that aligns with the gender of your choosing, right? So individual school districts wouldn't be able to just say no boys can compete in our athletics or against our girls or whatever it is. But what they did do at the school board meeting, and we'll get to more of it in a moment, is they voted to support two amendments that the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association is currently considering, both of which would essentially de facto ban biological boys from competing against girls. So this was sort of them saying, hey, and look, the timing is interesting. Frances's story has now gotten national attention. She and her mom were on Fox and Friends over the weekend, late last week, talking about it. And so then they have this school board meeting where the board decides, all the members but one, decide that they are going to take a stand and they're going to support these amendments that the WIAA is actively considering to change things and bring it more into alignment with what President Donald Trump's executive order is. So they didn't ban it. They couldn't ban it. But they're saying we are going to support the WIAA if it moves to essentially ban boys from girls' sports. So as with anything on this topic, there's those of us who are reasonable You know, there's reasonable parents, common sense people right, left, and center who are like, yeah, you know, we can't have boys competing against girls, who are saying it very respectfully. As the conversations on this show that we've had have been, including with Andy Rooks, the transgender athlete, who even said that we kind of had a point and President Trump kind of has a point when it comes to banning biological boys like Andy from participating in girls' sports. So there's those of us living in this place of reality where we can talk about these issues reasonably and rationally. And then there's the transgender activists that show up at meetings like this one.
Trans rights are human rights. Trans rights are human rights.
Everybody's attention, please. What are you saying?
Trans rights are human rights.
Yeah, and of course, if they can't get their way, they're just going to disrupt entire meetings and force the meetings to end early because they can't engage in any sort of civil conversation on the merits of the issue. They can't win these debates on the merits. So the far left does what the far left has always done, and they try to shout people down. They try to shut people up. They try to guilt people. They try to name call. I mean, what happened to Nicole and I when we were collecting signatures for a parental rights initiative? We probably, some of these same people, I guess if I looked at the crowd, I could probably pick out some of the same people. We were protested outside a coffee shop called transphobes for something that literally had nothing to do with transgender individuals whatsoever. It was about parental rights. So a few things from the speeches at this meeting. So one of the things that's interesting, there were not any speakers who spoke out in favor of defending girls. And we have talked to some people on background who really felt like this was the board president sort of behind the scenes, getting all of these trans activists prepared to come and speak so it looked like there was overwhelming opposition to banning boys, when in reality there clearly wasn't, because all of the members except the board president voted in favor of the WIAA amendments. But here's one of the speakers that showed up talking about we can't do this because equity.
I don't think segregation is the solution to an equity problem around this. I know it's hard to teach at a time when bathrooms are blocked in Congress and now a basketball court in Tumwater High School for a young girl.
For a young boy. So it's, again, you're talking about, you're comparing this to segregation, which is just the most insane thing ever, comparing it to segregation. And here's the board president, again, the only member of the board who apparently wants biological boys to compete against girls.
I firmly oppose to this resolution because of the message it sends to our transgender students here in the Tumwater School District. Since 2016, I've advocated for students, staff, and families here in the Tumwater School District, and to have a space to be their authentic selves and to live the life that they are meant to live. Transgender students are part of our district. I'm concerned that this resolution communicates that we do not see these students as an equal part of our community.
What says that? You're basically saying that they don't get special treatment, but because they aren't going to get special treatment, then that sends a message that they aren't an equal part of your community. It just shows just the unhinged nature of this belief process. Here's the vote. Again, very lopsided.
All those in favor of Resolution 092425, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. I'm abstaining. And Jones abstaining.
Oh.
Right. Motion carries.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's an example of how, like, social media isn't real life. Activists and activist voices aren't reflective of real life. So here you have this meeting where these trans activists pack the meeting. They're the only ones speaking. They're shouting so much so the meeting had to end early. And we're told that a school board member was spit on as they were escorted out. Like, police had to be called to this meeting. It's just so indicative of the far left. They showed up, they're not getting their way, they're yelling and screaming, the meeting has to be canceled early, the police get called, the police have to escort out the school board members, and one of the school board members who voted in favor of this resolution gets spit on. And like, we're the ones who are hateful, we're the ones who are intolerant, Yeah, that sounds totally legitimate. But in the background of all of this, so I've been, attacked online by the Tumwater Education Association, the teachers union. Don't care. Had fun with that. I was also attacked online while we were on break by the Thurston County Democratic Party. Don't care. Have fun with that. But I want to read part of their post to you. So this is the night of the meeting. So this meeting was on Thursday evening. So Thursday, 3:15 p.m., the Thurston County Democrats post this. Now, you've seen what the meeting was, right? Here's what they posted before the meeting. Tonight, transphobic comments are expected at tonight's Tumwater School Board meeting. This is an opportunity to go and show your support for trans youth, especially trans athletes. Yeah, did you see any transphobic comments at that meeting? No, I saw a lot of trans activists acting absolutely foolish and allegedly spitting on people who don't agree with them. And then they go into the background of this whole, at a recent high school JV girls basketball game, 2 Tumwater girls sat out and refused to play because one of the players on the opposing team was transgender. After the game, one of the girls publicized the incident on social media. She and her mother were then interviewed by right-wing social media influencer Brandi Kruse. Oh my God, how could we? So somebody sent me that post and I was like, right-wing social media influencer Brandi Kruse here, and I'm happy to lead the resistance into this noble battle. And after that, they closed down comments and wouldn't let anyone who doesn't follow their page comment because, again, they weren't getting the responses that they wanted to get. There were people in the comments of the Thurston County Democrats saying, actually, have you listened or watched these interviews that Brandi did with the trans athlete and with Francis? These are kids. I mean, these are teenagers, and they were very thoughtful and very measured in the way they discussed this issue. And then you have Thurston County Democrats, literal adults who cannot be measured, who have to name call and label and act completely unhinged and contribute to what happened at the meeting. Make no mistake, the Thurston County Democrats pointing that out and saying there's going to be transphobes and transphobic comments led to the left-wing activists going there, shouting people down, spitting on people, having the police called, etc., because they can't win on the merits of this argument. And they are a rabid animal backed into a corner, lashing out because they are so fearful about the end of radical gender ideology. Because what happens when it comes to an end? And this is very important and kind of the point of me talking about this again today. When you see them lashing out, calling me a right wing, attacking me on social media, saying I'm leading to threats against teachers and against the district, and we have so far yet to see any legitimate evidence of any threats. Even the threat that was reported to the Olympia Police Department in the police report isn't a threat at all. It's like, how would you like it if you had to play against biological boys and get hurt on the court or whatever it was? It was absolutely ridiculous. So they lash out, they name call, they label, they try to other and silence voices. Well, now the Thurston County or the Tumwater School District Board won't be silenced, even in the face of the screaming and the shouting and the vilification. All but one said, yeah, we don't support boys and girls sports. And that's in Tumwater, a pretty progressive area. And so you're starting to see the tide turn even in places like that. And so why are they so worried? Why are the Thurston County Democrats so worried that they're lashing out? Why is the Tumwater Education Association, the teachers union, so worried that it's lashing out? Why are these activists so worried that they're lashing out and spitting on people who they don't agree with? It's because if they don't have this, they have nothing. If they don't have this, they have nothing. If the Democratic Party doesn't have radical gender ideology and the fear-mongering around it and the ability to push it as some sort of like social issue of our generation, then they have to defend their policies on the merits of actual substantial issues like crime, taxation, the homeless crisis, substance abuse, and they lose on all of those issues. The social issues, even like abortion and, trans rights, these are the only things they have to cling to try to convince people and scare people into voting for them, because they make it out to be this issue that separates the hateful from the righteous, right? So if they lose their grasp on this issue, they start to lose their grasp on voters. And if they start to lose their grasp on voters, they start to lose their grasp on power. So that explains why Democrats are lashing out over this, right? So why are educators lashing out over this? Why do you have people like the president of the Tumwater Education Association who are lashing out against me for platforming someone like Francis Stout? Well, it's because test scores and every other thing that actually matters in academics is going really poorly. Test scores are in the toilet. Enrollment is down. Absenteeism is at an all-time high. And it's because, in part, of the pushing of these radical political and social indoctrination in schools, much of which we've documented on this show and in our documentary Operation Indoctrination. So if they can't push that, if they can't focus on that, then what does the focus then become? God forbid the focus the focus is on academic outcomes and academic achievement. And they are failing in those important areas. So of course they want people focused on DEI. Of course they want people focused on radical gender ideology. Because if you're focusing on those things, then you're not focusing on their failures as educators and in the failures of our public school system. So that's why Democrats are backed into a corner, right? And why they're lashing out. That's why educators feel backed into a corner and are lashing out. God forbid the funding that they'd lose if DEI goes down the drain and they can't continue to push these things. And then you have the trans activists. And look, the trans activists who we see at these events, who we see showing up to protest Nicole and I, or who we see showing up at school board meetings, these are activists who protest a number of other things. They're the same faces that are there to protest against Israel. They're the same faces that are there for Black Lives Matter protests. They're the same faces that were there for the Occupy movement. They're the same faces that are there for the tax Amazon, the rich are evil. Same faces that are there for the Trump derangement syndrome protests and the people who are at the Tesla dealerships protesting Elon Musk. They're always feeling backed into a corner because they're perpetual victims. And they feed off of being victims. They feed off of it. So they're always going to be there, no matter what. If radical gender ideology goes away tomorrow, they'll find another thing to show up at school board meetings and scream and yell about and act oppressed. If DEI goes away tomorrow, they'll find another thing to show up at school board meetings and act oppressed. It's because they, through and through, have a victim mentality, and they'll always have a victim mentality. And this is how they find meaning in their lives. This is how they make themselves feel righteous, like they're standing up for something. So to continue to factor into the equation the voices of a small vocal faction who have been yelling about whatever the far left issue of the day is for the better part of 20 years is not how we can continue to pursue policies and weigh policies in the state of Washington anymore. So as soon as we have regular people, right, left, and center, who are willing to say, okay, we are not going to acquiesce to the loudest voice in the room anymore, we'll let them move on to their next issue of the day, the sooner we can get back to sanity. So everyone feels Democrats backed into a corner lashing out. That's fine. Let them tucker themselves out. Washington Education Association, all the teachers' unions, backed into a corner lashing out. That's fine. Let them tucker themselves out. If they want to go after me, call me a right-wing social media influencer, accuse me of leading to threats against schools, let them do it. It doesn't bother me one bit, and I'm happy to be the backstop for all of that. Because once they exhaust all their screaming and shouting and hand-wringing and all of that, at the end of the day, people are still waking up. And the days of radical gender ideology, DEI, are coming to an end, and they will then have to stand on their merits, which, as we know, is a stack of papers about that high. So I'm not too worried about it.